Hey guys, I'm Fuller,
I'm Jonah.
and this is this week's Off the Line. Kind of a shorter episode this week. There's not a lot of Prem action going on. It's been divided up into FA and Carabao Cup fixtures. So this week's episode, we're just kind of going to be focusing on transfers and then continue on with our MLS preview. So I think the biggest transfer so far, Gonzalo Higuain transferring from AC Milan to Juventus to Chelsea. On loan until potentially next season. There's that option to buy. And that kind of is also going to set off a chain reaction for Milan, who just signed, I believe it's Piatek,
Yes.
that his name, from Genoa.
Mm-hmm.
And now potentially Alvaro Morata is going to go to Atletico Madrid, which we are going to get to talk about. And I'm not really sure who Juventus is getting out of that deal. I'm not sure if they're buying a player.
They just got a fat loan. I know they got a fat loan fee. I looked
so they're
today.
getting some money out of it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a double-digit loan fee, and it's literally a 6-month loan fee. So definitely not a bad deal for them.
But for Chelsea,
Good,
bad, great deal.
I think that he's a great in the box striker, which is exactly my complaint about Chelsea for the past couple weeks has been that once we get to that final third of the final third, there's just no focal point, and he's the kind of player. He's a poacher in pretty much every sense of the word. He's not ridiculously athletic. I think he does get a hard time. A lot of people criticize him. Sometimes they question whether he's at the beginning of every season. It's whether he came back overweight. And I think he is a little bit more athletic than people give him credit for, but at the same time, he's not super pacey. But I think that Chelsea has plenty of pace around him that he could fit really well. I just have some question marks about whether he's able to do it on the biggest stage, but Chelsea's nowhere near the biggest stage right now, so that shouldn't hopefully be an issue. So I like the move overall, but like I said, if it doesn't work out, that loan fee looks really, really rough.
Yeah.
For 6 months.
My question, it's kind of a two-part question. The first one is the entire meat of this question. The second one is just a little future question. If you're Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho, and your two biggest problems with Chelsea's board have always been not getting the money, how mad are you to see them lash out? Was it about $75 million for Pulisic, and then I don't know. They haven't really said how much the deal I think for Higuain would be if they agree to buy him, but
right.
I assume it's going to be between 35 to 45 million, given his age and all that.
I think it's going to be roughly double what the loan fee is right now, which I think what I saw the conversion into U.S. dollars was about 19 million.
Yeah.
So you can expect the transfer fee to be double that, so about 40 million.
So
if we wanted to permanently take him.
Do you think this is the right step for Chelsea? Do you think this is the board and Abramovich finally relenting and saying, yeah, we're going to spend big. We're going to go get some big names?
I mean, when you look at what they spent on Pulisic and obviously what they spent on Kepa, absolutely. I think the Higuain situation is a little bit different because we get to test the water first, and also you have to realize that's getting a player on loan, but the transfer fee we would assume would be around 35-40 million. That's 35 or 40 million for a player
great player.
I was talking about this off camera, but since he was bought by Napoli, nobody's scored more goals in Serie A than him. I believe he's been in Serie A for 5 years now. This is his 4.5 seasons.
With a car to your leg.
Yeah, and you got to think about some of the players that have played in that league over that time. So to be able to hang your hat on that and then be able to say you're picking him up for that price, you are spending money, but that's an incredible deal if it works out.
So the second part of that question, and this is very opinionated for you. If you do sign Higuain, how would you see the Chelsea front three lining up with and without Eden Hazard? Because I feel like they're not spending all. You made this point last week. They're not going to spend all that money if they don't think they're going to recoup some of it in some way, shape, or form. And spending big like that leads me to believe I think they're going to sell Hazard in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of astounding to me that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later because there are certain teams that are definitely taking advantage of this, but it's astounding to me that Chelsea have let Eden Hazard's contract run down this much to where he can essentially force a move this summer if he wants very easily, or he could walk away on the free after that. So from that perspective, I don't know if the interest from Real Madrid has cooled necessarily, but I definitely heard way more about it this summer than I have this January. This January, all I've really heard about is how it could potentially happen this next summer. So I don't know. I think that if the opportunity's there for him to go, he'll definitely go. But I think that Real Madrid have a lot of different things that they need to address first than finding like a big name, flary, attacking like
I agree.
player. They definitely have different player issues they need to sort out. I know there's a large contingent of people that want Sergio Ramos to leave. They feel that he's running the club more than he has more power than the manager. So I think there's like seeds of discontent in that club right now. So I don't know if that's something that Eden Hazard has necessarily picked up on. Obviously, he's picked up on that they're not having a good season. Everybody knows they're not having a good season. So yeah, I don't know if that's something he's picked up on because I haven't heard him talk about it super recently, but I haven't heard people asking him about it super recently either, which usually he doesn't bring it up unless he's asked. And a lot of time that's happening on international breaks away from the club when he feels like it's more respectful to talk about.
So how do you see if Higuain were to stay? Do you see Pulisic on the right, Higuain in the middle, Hazard on the left, or someone else on the left?
I could see Pulisic on the right or left. We've seen Willian and Pedro both linked to different clubs. Like, I don't know if he will be at the end of this season because to me he hasn't been having a very good season at all. But Willian was linked with Barcelona over the summer.
I remember that.
And Pedro's been linked with several different La Liga clubs. Like Sevilla comes to mind is the most recent one that I've seen, which I think as a move could make sense for him too. So I don't expect both of them to be there. So I think Pulisic would play either on the right or the left, depending on who else was in. Pedro can play both sides really well. Willian usually is more out on the right flank.
Rabiot, Adrien Rabiot, is that saying it right? Adrien Rabiot to Tottenham. Good deal, bad deal? Does this make sense?
Super smart deal.
$20 million?
I'm a big fan of Rabiot. He has like a very calming presence on the ball. He doesn't get shaken easily. He doesn't get put under pressure very easily, which is something that I think is really, it's good for to say about any player, but to say about a player of his age to have such confidence on the ball, I definitely think he's a great player. I rate him very highly. I do have a lot of questions about his attitude, but at the price that is being rumored, about $20 million, I think like it makes a lot of sense for Tottenham. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense.
Big news, Sky broke it today. Supposedly, when big things say they break news, I always have to wonder if it's actually being broken or they just have someone on the inside who says it. But supposedly, according to Sky, Caleb Hudson-Odoi submitted a transfer request to Bayern Munich. I know that Bayern have submitted 4 transfer requests this window for him, and that's on top of the 3 or 4 they submitted last transfer window for him. And as a Chelsea fan, I'm sure you've been wanting to see him play for a while. Why do you think he has not been able to break into the Chelsea team? I mean, there seems to, from what like our conversations, there seems to be a lack of, I would say creativity because you have players like Eden Hazard, but I just feel like Chelsea's a team that could benefit from a player like Odoi so much, and they're about to let him walk to Bayern. Basically.
Yeah, you're seeing different players across the EPL from England making decisions like these, but Chelsea definitely has created, and this is a huge criticism of Chelsea, they've created this environment where they keep coaches for such a short amount of time that when a coach comes in, it's really of no benefit to them to develop these players. They need players that they know are going to win them that next game in that moment. And it's not Callum Hudson-Odoi, it's been Ruben Loftus-Cheek, it was Michy Batshuayi. Surprisingly to me, I thought he would definitely have a bigger hand.
Turn out.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been happening. There are way others. I'm not just going to keep listening because we have like 40 players out on loan. I could literally keep going and keep going. Like, it's definitely an issue. And I definitely think that more and more players are seeing this and being smarter about what clubs they try to go to. We're seeing Hudson-Odoi push for a move to Bayern, which makes a lot of sense for a young player. Like they've been a club that have always given young players like a chance.
Yeah.
They don't always turn out. Like we're seeing Renato Sanchez was not ready for that move.
Julian Green.
Mario Götze, played decent for them, but some would argue that he wasn't ready for that move. He ended up back at Dortmund. So but they give their players a chance. They're young players. So the move from Hudson-Odoi's perspective, I think makes a ton of sense. I think it's a shame that Chelsea can't hold on to him, but I definitely don't blame him for being in the situation that he's in, if that rumor's true.
Yeah. So the biggest surprise transfer so far, Kevin Prince Boateng to Barcelona.
Love it.
And I guess my comment on that is that transfer was done like that. There was no rumor. There was nothing in the media. It was just you woke up, Prince Boateng is being unveiled as a Barcelona player. That's not a discount of him as a player, because I love FIFA 2013. Like, it was one of the best midfielders to use on there. It was just so fun, but it was just so out of the blue.
That is a loan move, correct?
It is a loan move.
I think it is, but yeah, I just first of all, I love the quote from him saying that it's fulfilling a dream of his, which obviously it would be, but when you're a player of his age playing for, I think he came out of Sassuolo to come to make this move. I think that you would probably imagine most of your dreams as a footballer have probably already been made. So I think I'm very happy for him. I've always been a really big fan of his to begin with. But yeah, no, I looked more into what he's been doing recently after the move, and I found out that he's been playing this strange, almost striker for Sassuolo. So I very much expect him to be playing
as a backup for Suarez.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In that role, which I think could be very interesting. I definitely don't expect to see him playing tons of minutes. I definitely see him coming off the bench a lot and getting games in maybe like the League Cup and stuff like that. But I'm happy for him. He has a ton of experience. I read about him that he can speak like 8 or 9 different languages, so he's going to be able to communicate with everybody in that locker room really, really well. In his time in Italy, he really left Germany kind of with a questionable tag kind of associated with him. He played really well for Schalke at first, but it got to a point where he was kind of like Klaas-Jan Huntelaar. He wasn't playing well, and they were just really draining their wages, wasting all of their wage budget on these players. And he was really able to shed that tag when he moved to Italy. He's been all around Italy since then. But yeah, I'm excited for him.
Nathaniel Klein went to Bournemouth. And my question about that is, now the injuries to Trent Alexander-Arnold, there's no one really to slot in who can play right back for Liverpool. Do you think Klopp regrets that? And do you also think Bournemouth got kind of a steal there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Bournemouth got a really, really good player. A player that's kind of gone under the radar ever since the emergence of Trent Alexander-Arnold, to be honest, because when
he was supposed to be the true.
Coming out of Southampton, he was very, very highly touted. He was supposed to be the future of England's right back. There was a lot of potential there, so I think that Bournemouth have gone in and made an amazing deal, and I think it's made even better when you look at the kind of injury problems that Liverpool are having right now. Like you said, like Trent Alexander-Arnold, Joe Gomez. They played James Milner in it last week, but he went out with a red card. So now, Fabinho played center back. I think Fabinho might have to play right back. Fabinho plays right back for Brazil. Played a little bit for it at Monaco. Yeah. So we're seeing Fabinho really, really
pushed.
Be the James Milner, the James Milner of this team. When James Milner was kind of being used in the same kind of fix a leaking gap type situation.
It's better than this is off topic, but a Liverpool match. I remember a United Liverpool game 4 years ago, and Brendan Rodgers was down 2-0 to United, and he puts in a center back as a striker, and that was to this day one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. But continue on.
No, I think that it's interesting that Klopp let him go in the situation that Liverpool are in right now. Maybe it was out of his hands. Maybe it was a situation where
I need to get
Yeah.
play time.
Yeah, when players of that kind of profile enter a team, a lot of times they'll have clauses in their contracts where if I don't play X percentage of league games over a span of time, like I have the right to push for a loan, or sometimes it's even I have a right to push for a transfer. So it could have been one of those situations. Just remembering how highly touted he was, I could see him getting something like that in his contract because he was so well.
Yeah.
On the up when they signed him, but I don't know. It's just strange that they have so many injuries,
They would let him go.
and then they let a really really good player go.
No.
So,
last bit of transfer news. Talked about this in the beginning. So we get back to it. Alvaro Morata to Atletico Madrid. I don't know. To me, it just seems like it would not be a match made. I feel like there's better teams for Morata. I don't know which teams those are, but I feel like Atletico Madrid, they have Antoine Griezmann. He'd be playing second fiddle to him. I don't know. It doesn't seem right to me.
it seems like a really really harsh environment.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen from him over his career, he does not do well in harsh environments. I think he has a ton of talent. I think in the right situation, he'll score you a lot of goals, and he'll be really good in his link-up play as well. But I think he just, like, I'll reiterate what I was talking about earlier off camera. Like, I see him as a player that very much needs the support of the team, and he needs the support of the manager, and he definitely needs the support of the fans too. Like, some players, when they miss a shot, they're, like, even more sure that they're going to make the next shot. That's, like, what makes them such good athletes. He looks like the kind of player that once he shanks that first shot, you just know. And you can see in his face that he knows, too, that he's not going to hit anything the rest of the game. It very much reminds me of Fernando Torres sometimes when he was, like, in the depths of the depths at Chelsea. But, yeah, I just don't see it working out at Madrid. Atletico Madrid, just because it's a really harsh environment to play for. Diego Simeone is not the kind of coach that's going to come up and put his arm around you. Try to say things to make you feel better. That team, I don't think is going to... I don't know, that team just doesn't foster that kind of mentality. Like, right now they're being led by Diego Costa and Antoine Griezmann. Like, both of those players are for sure not short of confidence. Like, this team isn't going to be the kind of team I think that kind of will push themselves around a player like Alvaro Morata, so I really think that, and he has the talent too, I really think it's going to depend on whether he can hit the ground running, whether that works out or not. More power to him, but I know I've seen that Madrid fans, probably not all Madrid fans, but there's a good bit of Madrid fans that are not happy about the move and are being vocal about not being happy about it.
That's one of the ones I'm more interested to see work out. But I'll let you take over now for our MLS roundup.
Yeah. We'll be doing 2 more teams from the East and then 2 more teams from the West. In the East, we'll start with FC Cincinnati. Obviously, new expansion team. Not too far away from us here in Louisville. But I like a lot of the moves that they've been making so far. I know at the beginning of the transfer window, we were saying to each other, like, it's going to really make a difference, or it's going to really show their intent as a, like, franchise, what they do over this transfer window, whether they move in with a bunch of USL players or whether they decide to flex some money, spend some dollars, and bring in some talent. And I think the moves that they've been able to make have been really good so far. They obviously brought in MLS champion Greg Garza. They brought in a couple other MLS champions, though. They brought in Alvis Powell. He won a championship in Portland. They brought in Fernando Adi. He won a championship in Portland. They've also just made some moves that maybe aren't as flashy, but are really smart. Like, they brought in a 25-year-old American, Caleb Stanko. He's been playing in the not in the Premier League, in the Bundesliga for Freiburg for his entire career. So I just think it's kind of cool. He's been playing for the US U20s and the U23s. Obviously not made any senior caps yet. But I think that could be a potentially interesting move, because I was looking at his stat sheets, and he plays like double-digit games. It's not like he's just some random bench player. Like, he's a part of Freiburg's squad. And at 25 years old, that could be a good move, depending on how that turns out. And then they also brought in Leonardo Bertone from Young Boys in the Swiss league, which He's a midfielder, 25, 26 years old, something like that. And I just love the experience that he brings. Because I was looking at in the past 5 years they've been in 1 Champions League and 3 Europa League. So that's literally 1 year outside of Europe.
I think the Champions League was this year because United played him.
Yeah, and I was looking at his stat sheets. I don't know if they always made it out of the group stage, being young boys, but he was making 6, 7 appearances in the Champions League, in the Europa League. So this was another player that was involved in a European level talent. So to see Cincy be able to make these moves before they've even kicked a ball in the MLS, I think that it should make their fans pretty excited. I'm interested to see how they'll put it all together.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, it's looking good from the start.
We should go to a game.
We'll go.
But not with our Louisville stuff on.
Yeah. The other team we'll talk about in the East today is going to be the Montreal Impact. I definitely think that when we were talking about Cincinnati, we were talking about how they were making some pretty exciting moves. Montreal, I would say the exact opposite. Not necessarily this window alone, but when you just look at what kind of moves Remy Gard has made since taking over, and you got to remember there was a lot of hype when Remy Gard came in, like
from Aston Villa.
Yeah, he was coming off. He had been out of a job. I want to say he got sacked from Aston Villa, but I believe it was before they got relegated. It was that season.
I don't think there's any managerial success stories.
Right. It doesn't really matter either way, but there was a lot of expectations coming with Remy Gard, just having that pedigree. He was a very successful coach in Ligue 1 too, and he's just made interesting signings. Let me just read you off some signings he's made. He brought in 35-year-old Bakary Sagna, who at one point did play for Manchester City, but last turned out for Benevento in Serie A, who I believe got relegated, scoring less than I think by mid-season they had scored less than 10 goals. So the bottom of the barrel Serie A squad. 32-year-old Zakaria Diallo, who has never played outside of Ligue 2 in France. So he's bringing in these old French players that potentially could be good. Brought in a
Is Remy Gard French?
Yes. Brought in a 37-year-old Brad Fani from Marseille. So he's bringing in really old French players. These are all defenders, and I just don't like the direction that he's kind of taking this team. I think he's kind of relying on old boys, and we've definitely seen a trend away from that.
Yeah.
When you look at the franchises as a whole.
So I was about to say, he's bringing all these old people. No one in the MLS is trying to do that anymore.
Yeah.
They're trying to shed that retirement.
It's a very, very antiquated mold. So I think not only are those uninspiring signings, but I think it shows you the kind of mentality that he's approaching this whole team with. If you're bringing in these players towards the end of their career, think they can still get it done, maybe that's kind of the way that you view yourself in your own managerial career, and you're not going to be putting 100% into it. So there's definitely some questions there. They still do have one of the best creative attacking players in the MLS, Ignacio Piatti.
Not Mo Theo?
Huh?
Not Mo Theo?
I don't know who you're talking about.
Juve, a guy named Mo Theo plays for the Impact now.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, he got drafted 2 years ago.
Dope. Well, no, I'm sure he is, but Ignacio Piatti is perennial MLS MVP contender. So they still have him, but that defense does not look good, and they just haven't looked inspired since Remy Gard took over. So I definitely have some questions there. Over in the West, though, we hit LA Galaxy last time. We'll hit the other LA team this time, LAFC. I would argue, I don't know if you would agree or disagree, but I think they would probably have the most experienced coach in MLS now that Tata Martino has left the league. Bob Bradley.
Yeah, Bob Bradley.
Yeah. So not necessarily the most successful or the most top tier, but he's
one of
played
the more impressive CVs.
Yeah, he's coached multiple national teams. He's coached in 4 European countries. So he's been very he's been able to absorb soccer cultures from a bunch of different places. So I think he could definitely use that to advantage. If you're as smart as he is, he's Princeton educated. So
I did not know that.
Yeah. But no.
And he will email you if you say something mean about his son.
I also saw that they tweeted, LAFC's account tweeted, I don't know if it was yesterday or today, but Mark Anthony Kaye shout out to Mark Anthony K, Louisville City, came back to them. I was reading it was on their, I think it was on like their Sports Nation blog or whatever. I didn't realize how important Mark Anthony K had been to that team. He played like 21 games in MLS before he broke his ankle last season towards the end of July. But this story I was reading was just talking about how crucial he was in that midfield, both on the attacking side and on the defending side, which we can definitely say that we saw when he was with us.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see. I don't know. I want to just watch more LAFC now that he's going to be back, because I didn't realize that he was balling out for him as well as he was. So I'm really excited to see that. They just have fun players to watch. They have Diego Rossi. They still have Carlos Vela. They have Joshua Perez, who a lot of people might not know who Joshua Perez is. He's an 18-year-old American. His career really could. This is going to be like a big point in his career because he's getting transferred from Fiorentina. Definitely a step down, but he made his debut for Fiorentina in Serie A when he was 16. Through different managerial changes, he's been knocked all the way back down to their youth sides right now. But I don't know what coach it was that linked up with him, but at one point he had made like, I want to say a solid 8 or 9 appearances in the Serie A in a season. At 16, that's incredible.
Yeah, that's insane.
So yeah, now he's at LAFC. Very interesting to see how he's going to turn out. I hope it's not a Brooks Lennon situation when Brooks Lennon came back from Liverpool to Real Salt Lake. And like Brooks Lennon is great, but I mean when you go from
Liverpool
being a good player, being like a good player for Real Salt Lake, to being potentially like, I mean, I don't know if everybody thought he was going to break into Liverpool, but like he was at a Premier League club. So I don't want it to be another Brooks Lennon situation. I want it to be a situation where Josh Perez comes, plays really, really well, and then is able to build on that.
Is it a loan or is it a transfer?
I believe it's a transfer, which is why it's definitely like an important. It's definitely an important part or an important time in his career. And I don't know. Well, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I really want to look forward to watching that. And yeah, so far they've been able to hold on to Carlos Vela, and I think they'll be able to keep Carlos Vela now. He was rumored to be going to Barcelona, oddly enough, and that was before the
KPB.
Yeah, the KPB, and it was very much thought that Carlos Vela could either cover on the right-hand side because he has played right wing for LA and for Mexico before, but he could also play in that center forward number 10 role. So he could really be covered for Messi or for Suarez. But I think now that Barcelona has signed KPB, they're basically signed him for the reason they were going to sign Vea. So I think that they'll be able to hold on to Vea now, unless he's just going to be really agitating to go somewhere else. So that's good news for them. And I don't know if this died or not. I got it. All right. The last team is Minnesota, who...
kind of fun to watch sometimes.
Yeah, definitely fun to watch. I think on his day, like Darwin Quintero could be one of the most exciting players to watch in the league, and that was just his inaugural season last year. He came out at League MX, but like I had it here, like 11 goals, 12 assists. Like he's a very good player. He was dragging that team. I think they finished like 3rd or 4th bottom in the West. So if they can get him firing more often. I think they have a really, really good player on their hands. But I just have more questions about their coach. Like, they brought in Adrian Heath. Adrian Heath, for lack of a better word, failed in his job at Orlando City as an expansion team. So I just found it interesting that an expansion team would take a gamble on a coach that just failed at an expansion team.
Yeah.
And I just, like, They haven't made the playoffs yet, obviously, and that's going to be like the seminal. It's going to be a big moment for them. But as of right now, I question whether he's like you said, they're fun to watch. Like the kind of soccer that Adrian Heath plays is fun to watch. It's attacking, it's free flowing. It's not like sit back deep and defend. So that's why you don't hear the fans clamoring, and a lot of MLS, some fan bases do. Some fan bases are more intense than others. But you don't hear a lot of fans like clamoring for him to leave. But I question whether he's just the right man for the job just because of the success or lack thereof he had at Orlando. And he hasn't been able to show that it's going to be any different at Minnesota. But But yeah, I do think the one really, really could be an amazing signing because I thought he was older than he was. I looked into it today. He's only 31 years old, but they signed Ozzie Alonso from Seattle Sounders, who, I mean, for a team that's only in, I think this will be Minnesota's third season, could just be their second if I'm tripping out. But I think being able to sign a player that's won the MLS championship, has 8 years of MLS experience, like, that's a really, really good player, and he's captained the Seattle Sounders, and I think he captained some of the playoff games that they were in when Roman Torres wasn't able to play on their run to the championship. So, like, that could be a really, really good signing. That could be what that team needs. When you look at them, when you look at their roster and nobody really jumps out to you as a leader, and you watch them play, nobody really jumps out at you as somebody that's trying to grab hold of a game. That's very much the style that Ozzie Alonso has played for Seattle over the years. So he's 31. Some people would say he's on the downhill, on the downslope, but that could end up being a really important signing for them. So I'm interested to see how he'll fit into that team.
Cool. Well, I think that wraps things up for us this week. I'm Fuller.
I'm Jonah.
Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.